My husband made me sleep outside in the snow so his sick best friend could have our hotel room, but he doesn't know that he was about to lose everything back home. Me and Nathan had been planning this ski trip for 6 months. I'd saved up all my vacation days, booked the perfect cabin at this resort in Colorado, even bought new winter gear because Nathan said he wanted to take cute couples photos on the slopes. We drove up together and he spent the whole ride on the phone with his best friend Vanessa, telling her about our plans. I thought it was weird, but whatever. They talked all the time about work stuff since she was in the same industry. We got to the resort and there was some mix-up with our reservation. They said they'd overbooked and only had a standard room instead of the cabin, but it was still nice and they'd give us a discount. Nathan seemed weirdly relieved about the downgrade. We checked in, went to dinner, everything was perfect. Then the next morning I woke up and Nathan was already dressed. He said Vanessa was here. I asked what he meant, and he said she'd decided to take a spontaneous trip, and what were the odds she'd pick the same resort. We went to breakfast and there she was in the lobby, acting all surprised to see us even though she'd already texted Nathan that morning. She started crying about how her ex had just gotten engaged and she needed to get away. Nathan immediately invited her to ski with us. I pulled him aside and reminded him this was our trip. He said I was being selfish and she was going through something. That night, a blizzard hit. The resort lost power in some buildings. Vanessa's building was one of them. She showed up at our door with her suitcase saying she couldn't stay in a room with no heat. Nathan said of course she could stay with us. We had one bed. I said she could take the couch. She started having a panic attack about her claustrophobia and how she couldn't sleep in the living area because it was too open, and reminded her of her childhood trauma. Nathan actually asked if I'd mind taking the couch so she could feel safe. I said absolutely not. That's when Vanessa started coughing. She said the stress was triggering her autoimmune condition and she needed to lie down. Nathan helped her to our bed. She claimed she couldn't breathe properly and needed space. Nathan looked at me and said maybe I should go to the lobby for a while. The lobby was closed because of the storm. He said then maybe the hallway. I asked if he was seriously kicking me out of our room. He said I was stressing Vanessa out and making her condition worse with my negative energy. She needed rest and warmth or she might have to go to the hospital. I said then take her to the hospital. He said I was being heartless. I grabbed my coat and left. The hallway was freezing. I tried the stairwell, but it was worse. I found an unlocked conference room and slept on the floor using my coat as a blanket. At 5 a.m., security found me and asked what I was doing. I explained and they said that was impossible because the resort had backup generators and no buildings lost power. I went back to the room. Nathan and Vanessa were in bed together. Not even doing anything, just sleeping. But her head was on his chest and his arm was around her. I packed my stuff and left. Drove 8 hours home in a blizzard by myself. Nathan didn't even text to see if I made it. I was so exhausted and upset that when I got to my apartment, I passed out in the parking garage. The security guard found me and called an ambulance. They called my emergency contact, which was my dad. He met me at the hospital where they said I had hypothermia and exhaustion. When I told him what happened, he went completely silent. Then he asked for clarification. His son-in-law, who worked directly under him at the firm, had left his daughter to sleep in a hallway during a blizzard so another woman could sleep in their bed. I told him everything. The fake power outage, the mysterious illness, the stress excuse. My dad left the hospital and I didn't hear from him for 2 days. Nathan finally called asking where I was because he'd gotten back and I wasn't home. I told him the hospital. He said I was being dramatic. That's when he mentioned my dad called an emergency performance review for Monday. Monday came and Nathan was fired. Nathan tried calling me crying about how his career was ruined. I reminded him about my negative energy and hung up. He moved back in with his mom. Then Nathan texted me, saying that he's suing me for alimony. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. I stare at the message on my phone and this weird laugh just comes out of me. Like my brain can't process the level of nerve it takes to send something like that. The nurse doing my discharge paperwork looks up and asks if everything's okay. I turn my phone around and show her the text. Her eyes get wide and she actually says, "Are you kidding me?" Which makes me feel a little better because at least I'm not crazy for thinking this is insane. She shakes her head and goes back to the paperwork, muttering something about unbelievable people. I sign the last form and she hands me the care instructions, telling me to follow up with my regular doctor in a week and to rest as much as possible. I thank her and grab my bag, still holding my phone with Nathan's text on the screen. The parking garage is freezing and I stand next to my car for a minute before I can make myself get in. My hands are shaking as I unlock the door, and I'm not sure if it's from the cold or from reading that text message 50 more times. I sit in the driver's seat and turn the heat on full blast. Then I call my dad. He answers on the second ring and asks how I'm feeling. I tell him I'm okay, but Nathan just texted me. There's this long silence on the other end, and then he asks what Nathan said. I read him the message about suing for alimony word for word. The silence gets even longer this time, and I can hear him breathing like he's trying really hard not to explode. Finally, he asks if Nathan actually believes any judge would give him money after what he did to me. I say I have no idea what Nathan believes anymore. Dad tells me not to respond to the text, not a single word, and says he's getting me a lawyer today. Not tomorrow, today. I start to say that's not necessary, but he cuts me off and says yes it is, and he's already thinking of who to call. I tell him okay, and we hang up. The drive home takes forever because I'm exhausted and keep having to pull over when my vision gets blurry. When I finally get to my apartment, I walk in, and Nathan's stuff is everywhere. His jacket on the coat rack, his shoes by the door, his stupid gaming setup taking up half the living room. I drop my bag and go straight to the closet to grab garbage bags. I start with his clothes, yanking everything off hangers and shoving it into bags without folding anything. Every single item makes me angrier. His ski jacket that he bought special for our trip and barely wore. His collection of craft beer in the fridge that he always said was too good to share. His electric toothbrush in the bathroom. His protein powder and supplements taking up counter space. I'm throwing things into bags so hard that one of them rips, and I have to start over with a new one. 3 hours later, there's a knock on my door and it's my dad holding 2 business cards. He comes in and looks at all the garbage bags piled in the hallway and asks if I'm okay. I say I'm fine. I just needed to get his stuff out of my sight. Dad hands me the cards and says both attorneys are excellent and either one would be happy to take my case. He vetted them through his legal contacts at the firm. I look at the cards and thank him. He glances at the bags again and asks if I want help finishing. I can tell by his face that he's trying really hard not to say anything about Nathan, like he's biting back a whole speech about how he never trusted him. I tell him I've got it under control. He nods and squeezes my shoulder, then says to call him after I meet with whichever attorney I choose. The next morning, I'm sitting in Jasmine Swift's office, and she's exactly what I need right now. No nonsense, direct, taking notes while I tell her the whole story from start to finish. When I get to the part about sleeping on the conference room floor, she stops writing and looks at me. Then she keeps writing. I show her Nathan's text about alimony, and she actually smiles a little, but not in a nice way. She tells me his claim is ridiculous, but we need to take it seriously and file for divorce immediately. She asks if I'm ready for that, and I say yes without even thinking about it. Jasmine pulls out a legal pad and starts explaining strategy. She says Nathan's abandonment during a medical emergency is huge, especially combined with how short our marriage was and his current employment situation. Or lack of employment situation, since my dad fired him. She says his alimony claim is extremely weak and we're going to countersue. Medical bills, vacation costs, emotional distress from his negligence, all of it. She asks if I kept any texts or emails from the ski trip, and I say yes, everything. She tells me that's perfect, because documentation is everything in cases like this. I spend the next 2 days at my kitchen table writing down every single detail I can remember about the ski trip. I start with the 6 months of planning, then the drive up with Nathan on the phone with Vanessa the whole time, the reservation mix-up that Nathan seemed relieved about, Vanessa showing up and acting surprised even though she'd texted Nathan that morning, the fake panic attack, the fake autoimmune condition, the fake power outage that the security guard said never happened. I write down timestamps from texts, the name of the security guard who found me, the names of the front desk staff, every lie Vanessa told, every time Nathan chose her over me, every moment of that night in the freezing conference room. Jasmine said documentation is everything, so I'm going to document every single thing I can remember. The hospital bills start arriving, and each one makes me feel sick. Even with insurance, I'm looking at thousands of dollars for the emergency room, the overnight stay, all the tests they ran. I call the insurance company to see if there's anything they can do, and they say this is after my deductible and copay. Nathan's insurance from my dad's firm was canceled the day he got fired, so there's no way to add him back on to help cover any of this. I'm stuck with the whole bill myself. I add up all the numbers and it comes to almost $8,000. For hypothermia and exhaustion that happened because my husband kicked me out of our hotel room in a blizzard. My phone rings and it's Nathan. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. He's crying, actually crying, saying his mom is driving him crazy and he can't believe I'm doing this to him. Doing what? I ask. He says getting him fired, turning my dad against him, refusing to talk to him. I remind him that he literally left me to sleep in a hallway during a blizzard, so another woman could sleep in our bed. He says I'm exaggerating what happened, that Vanessa really was sick, and I was being unreasonable. I ask him about the power outage that never happened, and he goes quiet. Then he says the resort must be lying to cover themselves. I hang up. Jasmine calls me later that day and says the divorce papers are ready to file. She's citing abandonment and reckless endangerment, and we're including a detailed account of the ski trip incident with my medical records attached. She says the medical evidence of hypothermia makes Nathan's actions impossible to dismiss as just a simple argument or misunderstanding. This isn't about hurt feelings. This is about documented physical harm that required emergency medical treatment. She asks if I'm ready to proceed, and I tell her yes. She says she'll file everything tomorrow morning and Nathan will be served within a few days. I thank her and hang up. Then I look around my apartment at all the garbage bags full of Nathan's stuff, and I feel lighter than I have since the hospital. The next morning, my dad texts asking if I want to grab lunch, which is unusual because he usually just calls. I meet him at this Italian place near his office, and he's already sitting in a booth when I arrive, looking uncomfortable in a way I've never seen before. We order and make small talk about work and the weather, but I can tell something's bothering him by how he keeps adjusting his napkin and not making eye contact. Finally, he puts down his fork and says he needs to tell me something. He says he feels guilty about the whole situation with Nathan because he's the one who hired him in the first place. I start to interrupt, but he holds up his hand and continues. He reminds me that he introduced us at that company holiday party 5 years ago, that he encouraged Nathan to ask me out because he seemed like a smart, ambitious guy who would treat me right. He says if he hadn't brought Nathan into the firm, if he hadn't pushed us together at that party, none of this would have happened. I reach across the table and tell him that Nathan fooled both of us. I say I appreciate everything he's done, especially firing Nathan, but I need him to understand something. I need to handle the divorce myself. He looks hurt, and I can see him wanting to argue, wanting to take over and fix everything like he always does. But I tell him I'm serious about this. He finally nods and says he'll stay out of it unless I specifically ask for help. We both know how hard that's going to be for him. The lunch ends on a weird note. Not bad, but not comfortable either. When I get home, there's a thick envelope waiting at my door from Zachary Goodman, Nathan's attorney. I rip it open and start reading the formal response to our divorce filing. The letter claims Nathan's alimony request is based on him sacrificing career opportunities to support my ambitions. I actually have to read that sentence 3 times because it's so completely made up. The document goes on about how Nathan took a position at my father's firm to be supportive of our relationship, how he turned down other offers that would have been better for his career trajectory. I'm standing in my hallway holding this paper and getting angrier with every word. I never asked Nathan to take the job with my dad. He pursued it aggressively, called my dad multiple times, sent follow-up emails, practically begged for the position. I call Jasmine immediately and read her the whole response. She tells me to bring all my documentation to her office tomorrow and we'll go through everything. The next morning, I show up at Jasmine's office with my laptop and a folder full of printed emails. We spend 2 hours going through Nathan's entire career timeline. I pull up the emails he sent to his friends when he first got the job offer from my dad. In one message, he literally wrote about how excited he was to land a position at his future father-in-law's firm. In another, he bragged about the salary being $15,000 more than the other places he interviewed. Jasmine highlights that one and adds it to her evidence folder. We find more emails where Nathan talked about the benefits package, the corner office he was promised, the fast track to partner he expected because of the family connection. There's nothing about supporting my ambitions or sacrificing anything. Every single piece of evidence shows Nathan took the job because it paid more and gave him status. Jasmine makes copies of everything and tells me this completely destroys their narrative. A few days later, I'm working from home when my phone rings with a number I don't recognize. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. It's Nicolette, the hospital social worker who helped with my discharge paperwork. She's calling to check on my recovery and asks if I have support at home. I tell her I'm managing, which is sort of true. She asks some more questions about my daily routine and whether I'm isolating myself. I realize as I'm answering that I haven't seen anyone except my dad and Jasmine in weeks. I've been ordering groceries online, working from home, avoiding everyone. Nicolette suggests a support group for people recovering from partner betrayal. I actually laugh and ask if that's really a thing. She gives me the details for a group that meets Thursday nights at a community center downtown. I tell her I'll think about it, but I'm already planning not to go. Thursday comes and I'm sitting on my couch staring at the address Nicolette gave me. Something makes me get up and drive over there. The meeting is in a basement room with folding chairs arranged in a circle. There are maybe 10 people there, all different ages. A woman running the group asks if I want to share and I say no, I'm just here to listen. Other people start talking and I'm shocked by their stories. One woman's husband left her at a rest stop during a road trip because he wanted to pick up his girlfriend in the next state. Another guy's wife cleaned out their bank account and moved to another country with her coworker. Hearing these stories of abandonment and betrayal actually makes me feel less alone somehow. Like I'm not crazy for being this hurt and angry. After the meeting, a few people come up to talk to me and I end up staying an extra hour just listening to their advice. The next evening, I'm heating up dinner when someone pounds on my apartment door. I look through the peephole and it's Nathan. My stomach drops. I don't open the door, but I ask what he wants. He starts talking through the door about how we need to discuss things like adults. I tell him to go through his attorney. He gets louder, saying Vanessa really was sick that night, and I'm making him out to be some kind of villain when he was just trying to help a friend. I ask him about the power outage that never happened. He goes quiet for a second, then starts yelling about how the resort confirmed no buildings lost power. He claims they're lying to protect themselves from liability. The excuse is so ridiculous that I actually laugh. That makes him angrier and he starts crying, actually sobbing through my door. He's saying he lost everything because of me. His job, his wife, his whole future. I tell him through the door that he made his choices and I'm done feeling sorry for him. He keeps crying and begging me to just talk to him face to face. I text Jasmine while he's still out there and she calls me immediately. She can hear Nathan yelling in the background. She tells me not to open the door and says she's sending a formal demand to his attorney right now. The next morning, Jasmine forwards me the email she sent to Zachary. It's a formal demand to stop all direct contact with me, warning that if Nathan shows up at my home again, we'll file for a restraining order. Zachary responds within an hour with a snippy message about how I'm being vindictive and making this harder than it needs to be. But Nathan stops showing up. The medical bills keep arriving, though. I've got them spread out on my kitchen table trying to figure out payment plans. Even with the hospital's financial assistance program, I'm looking at paying $200 a month for the next 3 years. I'm trying to work from home, but I'm exhausted all the time. The ER doctor said hypothermia recovery can take weeks, and she wasn't kidding about the fatigue. I fall asleep at my desk twice in one afternoon. My boss sends me an email asking if I need to take more time off, but I can't afford to miss any more work. I make coffee and push through, but every bill that arrives makes me more angry about what Nathan did and how I'm the one paying for it in every possible way. 2 weeks after getting back from the hospital, I finally drag myself into the office because I can't afford any more unpaid time off. The elevator ride up feels longer than usual, and my hands shake a little when I swipe my badge at the door. Everyone's already at their desks when I walk in. My coworker Sarah glances up and then immediately looks back at her computer screen. Tom does the same thing. Then Lisa. It's like they all got a memo about not making eye contact with me. I sit down at my desk and boot up my computer, and the silence around me is so thick I can practically touch it. Nobody asks how I'm feeling or says welcome back or anything normal. I open my email and there are 400 unread messages waiting. My boss sends me a chat asking if I can come to his office. I walk over there expecting some kind of lecture about my absence, but instead he closes the door and tells me he heard what happened. Not the details exactly, but enough to know it was bad. He says I can work reduced hours for the next few weeks if I need to, and I can work from home 3 days a week. I actually feel my eyes water because I wasn't expecting any kind of understanding. He says just let him know what I need and we'll make it work. I thank him and go back to my desk and spend the rest of the day trying to focus on spreadsheets while my coworkers continue pretending I don't exist. That evening, I'm microwaving leftovers when my phone buzzes with a message request on LinkedIn. It's from Damon Esposito, who worked with Nathan at my dad's firm. I haven't talked to Damon in probably a year, even though we used to chat at company events. His message says he needs to talk to me about Nathan and Vanessa, and that he has information I should know. My appetite disappears completely. I stare at the message for probably 5 minutes, trying to decide if I want to know whatever he's going to tell me. Part of me thinks I already know enough, and learning more will just make it hurt worse. But another part of me needs to understand what actually happened. I message him back asking when he wants to meet. We agree on a coffee shop near my apartment the next afternoon. I get there first and order a black coffee I don't really want, and sit at a corner table. Damon shows up 10 minutes later looking uncomfortable. He gets his own coffee and sits down across from me and immediately starts apologizing for not reaching out sooner. Then he just says it straight out. Nathan and Vanessa were definitely having an emotional affair for months before the ski trip. He saw them having lunch together almost every day. They'd stay late at the office when everyone else left. The way they looked at each other was obvious to everyone. Damon says he watched it develop over the fall, and by December it was clear something was going on, even if they weren't sleeping together yet. He describes seeing them in the conference room one afternoon, standing really close and talking in low voices. How Nathan would light up whenever Vanessa walked into a room. How she'd touch his arm when she talked to him. All these little things that individually might not mean anything but together painted a clear picture. I sit there listening and I feel sick because I remember Nathan coming home from work during those months. He was happy, excited about his job. I thought it was because he was doing well at the firm, but really it was because he was spending his days with her. Damon keeps talking and says he almost told my dad several times. He'd see Nathan and Vanessa together and think about going to my dad's office, but he didn't want to get involved in personal drama, and he wasn't completely sure what was happening. Now he feels terrible for not speaking up sooner. He says if he'd said something, maybe the ski trip never would have happened. I tell him it's not his fault and he shouldn't feel guilty about Nathan's choices. Then he offers to provide a written statement for my divorce case about everything he witnessed at work. He says he'll document the lunches and the late nights, and the way they acted around each other. He'll testify if needed. I thank him and we sit there for another 20 minutes while he tells me more details. How the office gossip was that Nathan had a crush on Vanessa. How some people thought it was mutual. How nobody wanted to say anything because of my dad. When I finally leave the coffee shop, I sit in my car for a while trying to process everything. The next morning, I call Jasmine and tell her about Damon. She gets excited immediately. She says this is exactly what we need because it establishes a pattern of inappropriate relationship that started way before the ski trip. It proves the trip wasn't some innocent coincidence where Vanessa just happened to show up. It shows planning and intent. She asks if Damon will really provide a statement, and I tell her yes. She says she'll draft something for him to review and sign. Then she tells me she's going to subpoena Nathan's phone records and credit card statements. I ask if she can do that, and she says it's standard procedure in divorce cases involving claims of infidelity. She explains that if Nathan and Vanessa were coordinating the ski trip ahead of time, there will be evidence in his phone and financial records. Text messages, phone calls, maybe even receipts from planning meetings. She sounds almost gleeful about it. I hang up feeling like maybe this case isn't as hopeless as I thought. It takes 3 weeks for the phone records to come back. Jasmine calls me the day she receives them and tells me to come to her office. When I get there, she has printouts spread across her conference table. Hundreds of pages of phone records covering the 3 months before the ski trip. She's already gone through and highlighted the important parts. There are literally hundreds of texts between Nathan and Vanessa. They texted every single day, multiple times a day, The volume alone is damning, but then Jasmine shows me the specific dates. The week before our trip, Nathan and Vanessa exchanged over 50 texts. The day we drove to Colorado, they had 7 phone calls. 7. I remember that drive. Nathan was on the phone constantly, and I thought he was talking to work contacts. Jasmine points to the timestamps. 3 of those calls happened during our drive. While I was sitting right next to him thinking we were having couple time, he was coordinating with Vanessa. One call lasted 40 minutes. I remember that one specifically because I'd suggested we play road trip games, and Nathan said he had to take this important work call. The evidence is right there in black and white showing exactly how much he was lying. Then Jasmine shows me the credit card statements and my stomach actually hurts. 2 days before we left for our romantic getaway, Nathan charged $470 to the same resort where we were staying. The description says it's for a room reservation. He booked Vanessa's room. While he was telling me how excited he was for our trip and how romantic it would be, he was literally paying for her to come crash it. Jasmine has the dates highlighted. Our trip was booked 6 months in advance. Vanessa's room was booked 2 days before we left. The premeditation is obvious. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't Vanessa making a last-minute decision to take a trip. Nathan planned the whole thing. He paid for her room. He coordinated with her during our drive. He set up the entire situation. Every lie about the power outage and her being sick was part of a plan they made together. I sit there staring at the credit card statement and I can't believe I was so stupid. All the signs were there and I just didn't see them. I have a therapy appointment with Priscilla that afternoon. Nicolette had given me her name weeks ago and I'd finally made an appointment. Priscilla's office is in a small building downtown. She's probably 50 with gray hair and glasses, and she has this calm energy that makes me feel slightly less anxious. I sit down on her couch and immediately start crying. I tell her about the phone records and the credit card statement. How Nathan literally paid for Vanessa to come ruin our vacation. How he was texting her while sitting next to me in the car. How the whole thing was planned from the start. I tell her I feel so stupid for not seeing it, for trusting him, for believing his lies about work calls and Vanessa being just a friend. Priscilla lets me cry for a while and then she says something that actually helps. She tells me that manipulative people are skilled at hiding their behavior. That's what makes them manipulative. She says being trusting isn't the same as being stupid. Nathan worked hard to deceive me and he was good at it. The fact that I didn't suspect him doesn't mean I'm naive. It means he's a liar. She says I need to stop blaming myself for not catching him and start processing the actual betrayal. We spend the rest of the session talking about trust and how to rebuild it eventually. The next day, Jasmine sends our updated divorce filing to Nathan's attorney. It includes Damon's statement, the phone records, the credit card evidence, everything that proves Nathan and Vanessa planned this together. I'm at work trying to focus on a project when Jasmine forwards me Zachary's response. The tone is completely different from his previous emails. Instead of aggressive demands about alimony, he's suddenly talking about resolving things amicably. He suggests we consider mediation to work out a fair settlement. Jasmine writes back that we're happy to mediate, but our position hasn't changed. Nathan owes me for medical bills and the destroyed vacation and his manipulation. She says the evidence makes our case even stronger than before. I read the email exchange and feel this weird sense of relief. They know they can't win. The evidence is too clear. Nathan's lies are documented in his own phone records and credit card statements. Whatever happens next, at least I have proof that I'm not crazy, and this really was as bad as it felt. Jasmine calls me the next morning, and her voice has this energy I haven't heard before. She says Nathan's attorney switching to mediation talk means they know the alimony claim is completely dead, and now they're just trying to make this look less bad for Nathan. She wants to agree to mediation, but go in with a strong position demanding full payment for my medical costs, complete reimbursement for the vacation expenses and coverage of my attorney fees. She says we have all the leverage now with the phone records and credit card evidence showing Nathan paid for Vanessa's room while planning our romantic trip. I tell her to set it up and she says she'll contact the mediator today. 2 hours later, my dad calls and I can hear the stress in his voice immediately. He tells me Nathan filed a wrongful termination complaint with the company board and they're reviewing his firing. I feel my stomach drop because I know this is my fault. My dad is dealing with professional problems because he protected me. Dad says the board will side with him once they see all the documentation of what Nathan did to me at the resort, but the process is still a pain and makes him look bad for mixing personal and professional issues. I apologize for causing him trouble at work and he cuts me off. He says firing Nathan was the right decision regardless of our relationship, and I need to stop feeling guilty about it. He tells me Nathan's work performance had been going downhill for months anyway. Constant complaints from clients and missed deadlines. The personal situation just made the decision happen faster than it would have otherwise. I want to believe him, but I still feel bad that he's dealing with a board review because of my marriage falling apart. That afternoon, Jasmine sends me an email that actually makes me smile. She says the wrongful termination complaint is helping our divorce case in a weird way. Nathan's attorney has to argue he was a good employee who got fired unfairly, which completely contradicts their earlier claim that Nathan sacrificed his career opportunities to support my ambitions. She writes that Nathan's legal strategy is backfiring so badly, she almost feels sorry for Zachary for having to work with such a mess of a case. She includes 3 laughing emojis at the end of the email. The next week, I drive to my dad's house for dinner, and we sit at his kitchen table with takeout containers between us. He asks how I'm doing with everything, and I tell him honestly that I'm tired of the legal stuff, but glad it's moving forward. Then I take a breath and tell him we need to talk about boundaries. I explain that I appreciate everything he did, firing Nathan and getting me a lawyer and supporting me through this, but I need to handle my own life and fight my own battles. He's quiet for a minute and then admits he knows he has a problem with trying to fix my problems instead of letting me deal with them myself. He says it's hard for him to watch me struggle and not step in to make it better. I tell him I get it, but I'm an adult and I need to learn to handle hard things on my own even when it sucks. We agree he'll check in and offer support but won't take action unless I specifically ask him to. It feels like the most honest conversation we've had in years. Then Dad tells me something that explains so much about Nathan's behavior before the ski trip. He says Nathan had been asking for raises and promotions constantly at the firm. Like every few months he'd schedule a meeting to talk about advancing. Dad had told him multiple times that he needed to earn his position through performance and results, not just expect special treatment for being the boss's son-in-law. Nathan apparently got really mad about that, and complained to other employees that he shouldn't have to prove himself like everyone else. Dad says Nathan seemed to resent having to work his way up instead of getting handed opportunities. Suddenly, Nathan's attitude in those months before our vacation makes sense. The irritability and the constant phone calls with Vanessa complaining about work. He felt entitled to more than he was getting and blamed my dad for not giving it to him. The mediation is scheduled for the following Thursday at Harold Castillo's office downtown. I meet Jasmine in the lobby and we take the elevator up together. She's carrying a folder with all our evidence and she looks ready for battle. We walk into the conference room and Nathan is already there with Zachary. Nathan won't look at me at all, just stares at the table in front of him. He looks terrible, like he's lost weight and hasn't been sleeping. His shirt is wrinkled and he has dark circles under his eyes. Part of me feels bad for him, but then I remember sleeping on that conference room floor, and the sympathy disappears. Harold comes in and introduces himself, explaining how mediation works, and that his job is to help us reach an agreement without going to court. He's probably 60 with gray hair and reading glasses, and he has this calm professional energy that makes me feel slightly less anxious. Harold reviews both sides' positions, reading from the documents our attorneys submitted. Then he looks directly at Nathan and tells him his alimony claim has no legal merit given the circumstances and the evidence we've provided. Nathan starts to argue, saying the evidence is taken out of context and doesn't show the full picture. Zachary actually reaches over and puts his hand on Nathan's arm to stop him from talking. Harold says the phone records and credit card statements speak for themselves, and continuing to pursue alimony would be a waste of everyone's time and money. Nathan's face goes red, but he stays quiet. Harold suggests we take a break for private discussions, and directs Nathan and Zachary to a different conference room down the hall. Once they're gone, Jasmine leans back in her chair and grins. She says we're in a really strong position to demand everything we asked for. She thinks Nathan's side will settle today because going to court would be embarrassing for him, with all the evidence of planning and manipulation laid out in front of a judge. She says judges don't look kindly on spouses who abandon their partners during medical emergencies, especially when there's proof it was premeditated. I ask what she thinks they'll offer, and she says probably something less than full reimbursement, but more than nothing. 30 minutes later, Harold calls us back to the main conference room. Nathan and Zachary are already seated, and Nathan still won't make eye contact with me. Zachary clears his throat and proposes that Nathan will drop the alimony claim completely if I agree to waive reimbursement for the medical costs. He says Nathan acknowledges the vacation was problematic, but the medical bills are excessive, and he shouldn't be held responsible for my decision to drive home in a blizzard. Jasmine responds immediately without even looking at me. She says Nathan needs to pay for the harm he caused, and he doesn't get to negotiate his way out of consequences. She reminds Zachary that Nathan's actions directly caused my hypothermia and exhaustion, and trying to avoid paying my medical bills after abandoning me during a blizzard is exactly the kind of thing that makes judges award maximum damages in court. Zachary's face goes pale and he whispers something to Nathan that I can't hear. Harold suggests we take another break, and this time when Nathan and Zachary leave the room, Nathan looks like he might throw up. Jasmine leans back in her chair and tells me we're close to getting everything we asked for, maybe even more if they're desperate to avoid court. She says Nathan's side knows they have nothing to work with, and they're probably trying to figure out how little they can offer while still getting me to agree. I ask what she thinks will happen, and she says Nathan will probably agree to pay the medical bills because those are documented and undeniable, but he'll try to negotiate down the vacation costs and attorney fees. 40 minutes pass before Harold calls us back, and when we sit down, Nathan won't look at anyone, just stares at his hands on the table. Zachary clears his throat and says they're prepared to offer full payment of medical bills, half the vacation costs, and half of my attorney fees if I agree to drop all other claims and accept a no-fault divorce. Jasmine doesn't even pause before responding that we want full medical bills, half vacation costs, and full attorney fees, plus Nathan drops all alimony claims permanently with no option to refile. She says those are our terms, and we're happy to let a judge decide if Nathan wants to gamble. Nathan finally speaks up, his voice shaking, asking if I really want to destroy him completely over one mistake. I remind him it wasn't one mistake. It was weeks of planning and lying, and I'm not destroying him. I'm just asking him to pay for what he did. Harold steps in and suggests we split the difference on attorney fees, and after another hour of back and forth, we reach an agreement where Nathan pays my medical bills in full, reimburses half the vacation costs, and covers my attorney fees completely. He drops all alimony claims, and we agree to a no-fault divorce to speed up the process. Harold prints out the settlement agreement, and Nathan has to sign it right there, and I watch his hand shake so badly he can barely write his name. Part of me feels bad for him because he looks terrible, like he hasn't eaten or slept properly in weeks. But then I remember waking up on that conference room floor, and the sympathy disappears completely. Jasmine signs for me, then Zachary signs as witness, and suddenly it's done. Walking out of mediation, I feel lighter than I have in weeks, like I can actually breathe properly again without that constant pressure on my chest. Jasmine walks me to the elevator and tells me the divorce should be done in about 60 days, once all the paperwork processes through the court, and then this whole chapter of my life will be officially closed. She says I should expect Nathan to make his first payment within 30 days per the agreement terms, and if he misses any payments, we can go back to court immediately. I thank her for everything, and she gives me her card, saying to call if Nathan tries to contact me or causes any problems. 3 days later, my dad texts me a screenshot of an official company document. The board ruled in his favor on Nathan's wrongful termination complaint, finding that Nathan's performance problems and professional behavior issues made the firing completely valid. Dad's text just says it's over, but I can tell from how quickly he sent the screenshot that he's relieved this part is behind him. I text back asking if he's okay, and he calls me instead, saying he never doubted the board would side with him, but it still feels good to have it officially settled. He mentions that Nathan's complaint tried to claim he was fired for personal reasons, but the board found multiple documented instances of poor performance and missed deadlines that had nothing to do with me. The next morning, I'm eating breakfast when my phone buzzes with a Facebook message notification. It's from Vanessa saying she hopes I know she never meant to hurt me, and what happened at the resort was all a big misunderstanding. She writes that she was really sick that night and didn't realize Nathan was making me leave the room, and if she'd known, she would have insisted I stay. I screenshot the entire message and send it to Jasmine before blocking Vanessa completely without responding, because I have absolutely nothing to say to her. Jasmine texts back within minutes saying to save all communication attempts from either Nathan or Vanessa, in case we need them later, and that Vanessa's message is basically an admission that she knew exactly what was happening. My therapy appointment with Priscilla is that Thursday, and we spend the whole session talking about trust issues and how I'm supposed to move forward from this. She's completely honest with me, saying that rebuilding my ability to trust people will take a long time and won't happen on any specific schedule I can plan for. She explains that the goal isn't to go back to being the person I was before Nathan, but to become someone stronger who knows how to trust wisely instead of blindly. I ask her how I'm supposed to know the difference, and she says it comes from paying attention to patterns of behavior over time, not just believing what people tell me they'll do. She gives me homework to write down green flags and red flags I notice in all my relationships, not just romantic ones, so I can start recognizing healthy versus unhealthy patterns. 2 weeks after mediation, I'm checking my bank account and see a large deposit from Nathan. It's his first payment toward the medical bills, and seeing that money actually show up feels more real than I expected. It's not really about the money itself, although that definitely helps with my finances, but more about him being forced to face what he did and take responsibility for the harm he caused. I text Jasmine to confirm the payment came through, and she says that's a good sign he's following the agreement, but we'll keep monitoring to make sure he doesn't miss any future payments. That same week, I run into Damon at a coffee shop near my office. We chat for a few minutes, and he mentions, almost casually, that Nathan and Vanessa are actually dating now. I tell him that shouldn't surprise me, but somehow it still does, and he laughs and says, the office gossip is that Vanessa is already treating Nathan exactly like she treated her ex. Damon says Nathan looks miserable every time anyone sees them together, but he's too proud to admit the relationship isn't what he thought it would be. He tells me Vanessa has Nathan running errands for her constantly, and complaining about everything he does, and apparently she's already talking about how he needs to find a better job to support her properly. I thank Damon for the update, and he says he felt like I deserved to know, and that everyone at the office thinks Nathan got exactly what he deserved. The divorce is done on a Tuesday morning while I'm working from home. The email notification comes through from the court saying all paperwork has been processed and the divorce is officially final. I thought I'd feel more emotional about it, maybe cry or feel relieved or something big, but mainly I just feel tired and ready to move forward with my life. I text my dad to let him know, and he responds, asking if I want to get dinner to celebrate, which feels weird but also kind of nice. We meet at this Italian restaurant we used to go to when I was younger, before I got married and stopped making time for family dinners. Dad hands me a card before we even order food, and inside is a check to cover the vacation costs that Nathan didn't reimburse. I try to give it back, saying he's already done enough by firing Nathan and supporting me through everything, but he won't take it. He says it's not about the money. It's about helping me close this chapter completely so I can start fresh without any remaining connections to Nathan. I fold the check and put it in my wallet. Then we order wine and actually have a nice dinner talking about anything except Nathan and the divorce. A week after that dinner, I'm sitting at my desk during lunch scrolling through vacation packages on my computer, and I book a trip to a beach resort in Florida for the following month. I pick somewhere with white sand and palm trees, as far from mountains and snow as I can possibly get. My coworker walks past and sees the confirmation screen on my monitor and says, "Traveling alone is brave after everything I went through." I tell her it's not really about being brave. It's more about proving to myself that I can do things on my own terms now, without Nathan's opinions or Vanessa's manufactured emergencies ruining everything. 3 days later, I'm checking my bank account before work and see a deposit from Nathan for the final amount he owes me. I sit there staring at the number for a solid minute because it means I'm completely done with any financial connection to him. I text Jasmine to confirm the payment cleared, and she responds that this closes out the settlement agreement completely. That afternoon, I pull all of Nathan's remaining stuff out of my closet where I'd shoved it in garbage bags months ago. I load everything into my car and drive to the donation center, and watching the worker carry those bags into the building feels better than I expected. Back at my apartment, I walk through each room and there's nothing left that belongs to him or reminds me of him. My Thursday therapy session with Priscilla focuses on what I've learned from this whole mess. She asks me to think about the early warning signs I missed with Nathan, and I realize there were so many red flags I ignored because I wanted the relationship to work. He was always on his phone texting Vanessa even during our dates. He made plans with her without asking me first. He got defensive whenever I questioned their friendship. Priscilla writes notes while I talk, and then she tells me that recognizing these patterns now is important for any future relationships, whenever I'm ready to think about dating again. She says the goal isn't to become suspicious of everyone, but to trust my instincts when something feels off instead of talking myself out of my concerns. The next Tuesday, I go back to the support group for the first time in a few weeks. The facilitator asks if anyone wants to share updates, and I raise my hand and tell them about getting through the divorce and settlement. I explain how Nathan tried to sue me for alimony after abandoning me during a blizzard, and how my attorney helped me fight back and win. When I finish talking, 3 different people come up to me during the break and thank me for sharing, because hearing that things can get better gives them hope. One woman says she's been stuck in her situation for months, and hearing my story makes her think she might actually survive her own divorce. Walking to my car after the meeting, I feel good about being on the other side of the worst part, even though I know I'm still healing and probably will be for a while. My dad and I meet for coffee on Saturday morning, and we have a conversation about boundaries that's been needed for months. I tell him I appreciate everything he did by firing Nathan and supporting me through the legal process, but I need him to check in regularly without trying to solve all my problems unless I specifically ask. He admits that staying back is hard for him because he's always been the person who fixes things for me. We agree that he'll call me once a week just to talk, and he won't offer advice unless I request it directly. It's a healthier way of relating to each other than we've had since I was a teenager, and I'm glad something positive came from this awful situation. On Monday morning, my boss calls me into his office, and I'm nervous for a second before he tells me I'm getting promoted to senior analyst with a significant raise. He says the promotion is based on my performance and dedication, despite dealing with personal challenges over the past several months. The extra money will help a lot with rebuilding my savings after all the medical bills and legal fees. I thank him and leave his office feeling like things are finally starting to come together in a way they haven't in almost a year. The beach trip happens 3 weeks later, and I spend 7 days reading books on the sand, walking along the water and not thinking about Nathan or Vanessa or any of the drama that consumed my life. It's the first time since the ski trip that I feel genuinely relaxed. My shoulders aren't tense, and I'm sleeping through the night without waking up angry. On the last day, I'm sitting on my balcony watching the sunset, and I realize I'm starting to feel like myself again. Not the version of me that was married to Nathan, but the person I was before I met him. When I get home, I reach out to an old friend I lost touch with during my marriage. We meet for coffee and catch up on the past few years. She admits halfway through our conversation that she never liked Nathan, but didn't know how to tell me without causing problems between us. She says he always seemed controlling about my time, and would get annoyed when I made plans with friends instead of him. We talk about how isolating relationships can be when your partner slowly discourages other friendships, without you even noticing it's happening. I tell her I'm committed to rebuilding my social connections, and not letting anyone make me feel guilty for having a life outside a relationship again. 6 months after the hospital, I have a follow-up appointment with the doctor who treated my hypothermia. She checks my vitals and reviews my chart, and tells me I've fully recovered with no lasting physical effects from that night. She asks about my mental health, and I'm honest with her that I'm working on it in therapy and making real progress, even though some days are harder than others. She seems satisfied with my answer and tells me I don't need any more follow-up appointments unless new symptoms develop. I'm walking to my car after the appointment when I decide to stop at the coffee shop across the street. I'm waiting in line when I see Nathan sitting at a corner table. He looks up and we make eye contact, and there's this awkward moment where neither of us knows what to do. He stands up and walks over and apologizes for everything that happened. His voice is quiet, and he won't quite look me in the eye. I can tell he's unhappy just from his body language, and the way he's lost weight and looks tired. Part of me wants to ask if Vanessa is treating him the way Damon said she was, but I don't, because it's not my problem anymore. I tell him I appreciate the apology, and then I order my coffee and leave. I don't wish him harm, but I also don't feel any need to absolve him or make him feel better about the choices he made. A few weeks later, my dad texts asking if I want to go hiking on Saturday morning, something we used to do all the time before I got married, but completely stopped doing once Nathan came into the picture. I meet him at the trailhead and we start up the path we always used to take, the one that winds through the trees and opens up to this view of the valley. We walk in comfortable silence for the first mile, just enjoying being outside together again. When we stop at the overlook, he tells me he's proud of how I handled everything with Nathan and the divorce, that watching me stand up for myself and rebuild my life has been incredible to see. I tell him I couldn't have done any of it without his support, even during the times when I was pushing him away or getting mad at him for being overprotective. He admits that learning to step back and let me handle things was hard for him, because he's always been the person who fixes problems for me. We agree on a system where he calls once a week just to check in, and he won't offer advice unless I ask for it directly. It's a healthier way of relating to each other than we've had since I was a teenager, and I'm genuinely glad something positive came out of this whole mess. The next week, I have my regular session with Priscilla, and we spend most of it talking about what healthy relationships actually look like, and how to spot manipulation tactics early before they become patterns. She walks me through red flags I missed with Nathan, like how he slowly isolated me from friends and made me feel guilty for spending time away from him. We discuss boundary setting and how to recognize when someone is testing those boundaries versus respecting them. By the end of the session, I feel more prepared for dating again someday than I did months ago. I'm not ready to actually date yet, and that's fine, but I'm also not scared that I'll never trust anyone again, or that I'm broken forever. That evening, I get a message through the support group app from one of the women who's been attending meetings. She tells me that hearing my story about leaving Nathan and fighting back legally gave her the courage to leave her own toxic relationship last week. She's staying with her sister now and working with a lawyer, and she wanted to thank me for sharing my experience so openly. Reading her message reminds me that talking about what we go through can actually help other people find their own strength to make changes. It makes everything I went through feel slightly more meaningful, like maybe some good can come from even the worst situations. A full year after that ski trip, I'm sitting in my apartment on a Saturday morning drinking coffee, and I realize how completely different my life is now. I'm single and honestly happy about it. Financially stable after paying off all the medical and legal bills, way closer to my dad than I've been in years, and genuinely content with where I am. I still have moments where I get angry thinking about what Nathan did and how he tried to manipulate the whole situation, but those moments are getting fewer and farther between as time passes. I'm building a future that's completely my own now, making decisions based on what I actually want instead of trying to keep someone else happy. The apartment is decorated the way I like it. I'm planning trips I want to take, and I'm spending time with people who actually care about me. It's not the life I thought I'd have a year ago, but it's so much better than the one I was living back then.